the two characteristics that I think were helpful in the beginning and a huge part of my life today are gratitude, because often things in our life aren't what we want. There are a couple of circumstances in my life now that are not at all what I want. But when I think of all I have to be grateful for, they pale in comparison. And and the most important thing, I think it's really so helpful for lawyers, and gratitude is for sure. But the other one is what I call acceptance. There are so many things in our life that we have no power over, things in politics, things in the world, things in the economy, things in our work environment. We may not like our managing partner, our client may be difficult, the other lawyer may be a jerk, but we have no power over those things. We can't control how our client speaks when he calls to us. We can try to manage it. We can try to respond appropriately, talk about the right way to say things. But the reality is we can't change other people's personalities or the circumstances. But so often we resist and focus on those very things that we don't like in our life. We think about how our partner is just too demanding and how our client's never happy and how that lawyer doesn't keep his word and raises his voice. We think about those things and we magnify the stress they cause. Instead of saying, look, that's just what it is. How do I want to respond? How do I want to respond to that difficult lawyer? How do I want to manage that client? Maybe I don't want to represent the client anymore. Maybe I need to set it down, whatever it might be. But I think those are two characteristics I think are very, very helpful to the practicing lawyer.
You had a really phenomenal post about having a panic attack in court that no one saw. Can you talk about that and the impact it had on you?
Yeah, and that was earlier in my career when I was still kind of developing some of these skills. And it had a lot to do with that fear that I felt. And you can't be a lawyer and go to court and be afraid. But I just felt overwhelmed, and no one sees it. It's an internal feeling. But some of the characteristics I've talked about now that I help my coaching clients with help them to manage those things without feeling such anxiety and fear and worry.
I think we all could use the improvements in all of those areas. You also speak about mental prisons. Can you talk about that?
Sure. I wrote a book called Breaking Free, and I talk about the 12 prisons of our mind. And for each of them, I give tools of how to overcome them. And I guess I picked 12 because it was a round number. It could have been 10, it could have been 15. But there are things like comparison, comparing ourselves to others, people pleasing, perfectionism, all three of which I suffered from, particularly when I was a kid. I was very, very heavy. I wore nerdy glasses. I wasn't particularly athletic, and I was brilliant. And the combination of those made me disliked by everybody because no one likes the smart kid who makes their 68 look bad when the smart kid got a 98. And so I grew up being bullied, picked on, not a wealth of friends. And so I grew up wanting to prove myself, wanting to be the best, so no one could criticize me, and people pleasing. So I'd act one way with you to curry your favor, and act a different way with a different person to curry their favor. And for me, they were very prominent. The other one that for trial lawyers that I highlight in there is worrying about the outcome of cases, or might be circumstances in our life. We have no control over the outcome. When I think of health things, I've been through a couple of health things, and they're particularly hard because you want to be healthy. You don't want it to go the wrong way, but we really are powerless over it except to do what's recommended, see the doctor, get the test, whatever it might be. So in my book, I talk about those 12 mental prisons and ways to kind of manage them: perfectionism and people pleasing and comparing and worrying about the future and being influenced by our past. I mean, I've learned how much my past influenced how I behaved at certain times, like with people pleasing.
Hmm. Has your definition of success changed over time?
Oh, that's interesting. So I think success, and it might have had to do with the stage of my life. In the beginning, it had a lot to do with stuff, not so much ostentatious stuff, but building a retirement account, funding school, making sure we had a nice home, um, and just making those things bigger. Making the retirement account bigger, and that was sort of where I was for most of my life. And I realize now it's just completely different. Um, I'm at a stage in my life where I can't do a whole lot about where I am with stuff and financially, but more than that, it's how do I want to be remembered? I love the book Everyday Legacy because he was Cody Shewan wrote it. He actually was in the funeral industry, and then he was motivated to kind of look at his life and how do I want to be remembered? What relationships I want to have with my family members and my loved ones, and now that's my focus. How do I want to be remembered? And I want to do things that are fulfilling. When I sort of stepped away from the practice, came here, I could play golf every day. I live in a beautiful place, a lot of golf courses. I belong to a nice place, but it wasn't really fulfilling. It's nice to do now and then, but that's how I got into coaching, because I want to be as helpful to other lawyers as I possibly can. I want to help them overcome the many obstacles I've had to overcome in my career, and teach them, show them, support them, wrap my arms around them, lift them to get to a place where they feel happy and fulfilled rather than stressed and overwhelmed.